There, I think I'll stay awake. This is good. I kind of warned a couple of folks before worship. I haven't preached in a month between vacation and that beautiful nursery school service and Camp Mac Sunday. So don't blame me if I get going and an hour later I'm still preaching. Just leave quietly and go to your Sunday school classes. I'm sure I won't even notice. Everybody wants to wear the cross. How many want to carry it? Everybody wants to be seen wearing the cross. Who really wants to be seen carrying it? Well, during the vacation, it wasn't easy, but I had to commandeer the television over at the house of Jenny's father, not because he doesn't care what's on, but it was a choice of, I wanted to watch the Olympics, and bless his heart, he's a great guy and would do anything for you, but he wanted to watch recordings of reality shows where they throw chairs at each other. So most times I don't do anything. I have a book anyway, but you know, the Olympics come every 4 years, the real Olympics. I'm not sure I consider the Winter Olympics all that real, you know, because there's a lot of ice and snow. But Olympics are very special. Maybe you're already past it, so me talking about it may not have much effect, but you know, it was, to me, one of the highlights of my life so far has been able to be a volunteer at one of the Olympics, the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, when I was living in Los Angeles, and to go to many events with the family and to see a lot, and even to know personally the person that lit the torch, that lit the fire with the torch, the last torch. That was a neat thing, and to know it 3 days in advance because his sister couldn't keep it a secret. But, you know, all the same, you're aware when you watch the Olympics that these people didn't just show up because they're good. I mean, at the very first modern Olympics, the marathon was sort of a throw-in at the last second, and this one Greek lieutenant jumped in and won it without ever having run at that distance, and he never ran that distance again. And if you've ever run a marathon like I have, I don't blame you. I don't blame him. But anyway, so during the Los Angeles Olympics, there was when you weren't actually going to see them, you know, you'd be sitting around with other folks and watching and cheering on and all that. And Jenny and I had a very good friend who thought about her brother the same way we thought about her brother. You know, he was one of the few people about which I could honestly say he was a waste of space. But don't worry, this story has a happy ending. Anyway, we're watching the Olympics, and he kind of wanders, as he always did, wanting to dominate a room. He's standing in front of the TV, eating a big piece of pizza, you know, saying, "What's going on?" Well, you know, hoping he'd move. I don't even remember which athlete, but so-and-so was on the verge of winning a gold medal. "Oh, good, go for it." Now, at that time, I was already planning my first marathon. I was planning out the training and looking forward to it and actually performing the marathon. And, you know, everybody has things that they do, but this guy really didn't have much ambition. And the idea of him munching this piece of pizza, you know, that his biggest exercise was going from the couch to the microwave and back with his piece of pizza. That was exercise, you know, saying, "Go for it." You know, "Oh, yeah, okay, then I will." Gee, I wasn't going to go for it before, but now that you said it, I certainly will. I said the story has a happy ending. This guy didn't know the difference between a refrigerator and a microwave. And the pizza he was eating had been in the microwave 3 days, not the fridge. And he had to leave and go get his stomach pumped for maggots. So I told you it has a happy ending. Only if you knew him. But I thought this past Olympics was really good coverage in one sense. With the coverage of most sports, as far as I could see, there would be a commercial from the Olympic Committee inviting young people to think about whether they might want to do it, telling them to look at a certain website to find out what was necessary. You know, I remember our daughter putting on her Mary Lou Retton costume in 1984, and that didn't necessarily make her a gymnast, but a lot of girls thought they were. You know, just putting on the uniform doesn't make you a gymnast of the caliber we saw. Stepping up to the starting line does not make you a marathoner of the caliber of the running that we saw. All the different the sports required, and this is what many of the documentaries made clear, a commitment to be all in. Swimmers getting up at 4 a.m. every morning, and despite the fact that they may have school or other commitments, swimming 6 to 7 hours a day is an incredible sacrifice. Think of all the parents who got up every morning to get their daughters and sons to gymnastics class in all weather, and then watched as their daughters didn't make the final team, but were part of the second team, which of course would not be going to the Olympics and would not be competing. They were all in. Let's hope that they realize how much it was worth to them, even if they did not fully succeed. But to be all in also invites not failure, because you can't call any one of those individuals a failure, but the possibility of disappointment. So I thought this past Olympic coverage did a good job of inviting young people to consider participating in athletics at a very high caliber of performance, but also made it clear through the many documentaries just what is involved, that you couldn't be involved just halfway. I mention all this because evidently there was a lot of excitement surrounding Jesus. It says here there was a very large crowd following him. Now the mind of Jesus as he walks to Jerusalem is upon the cross and his sacrifice and what it will mean. So his mind is in a different place than most people. But people could not help but be intrigued by the message of Jesus, by the ministry of Jesus, by the healings. And it was exciting to be part of the crowd. So often our picture of Jesus is of him and 12 apostles, a relatively small group, traveling the countryside. But the pictures the gospel gives us is of a much larger group. Is there any wonder that some of the religious leaders thought this might look threatening to Rome, to see such a large band moving around the countryside? So Jesus is being followed by a large crowd. And then he turns around and says something, like Byron pointed out, that can sound not only off-putting, but counterintuitive. If you want to follow me, you have to hate your mother and your father, your brothers and your sisters, everybody you know. Now, if you're trying to be Jesus' campaign manager, and it doesn't sound like he had much use for a campaign manager, you would want to get rid of the current management team and try to bring in some people to talk some sense to him and ask him to read from the prompter this time, instead of saying, if you want to follow me, you've got to hate your family. And if that wasn't enough, first he says that, then he says something that would have made all right-minded people cringe. If you want to follow me, you have to carry your cross. I think at a sermon some months ago, I showed you the extremely few depictions of a person being crucified, and they were mostly graffiti. It was not displayed in art in the ancient world because it was horrifying, it was obscene, it was meant to squelch all rebellion by the horrific nature of the crucifixion. Polite people didn't go and watch a crucifixion. Now, we know there were some there jeering at Jesus, but those were the same people that like to watch the kind of shows where people throw chairs at each other. People didn't say, carry your cross. You know, wash your mouth out with soap, Jesus. And finally, you know, he says that he gives a couple of examples. What are people going to think if you're not all in? If you start to plan a building, if you start to build a barn, if you work on a shed in your backyard, what are people going to think if you maybe you pour some concrete and you realize, oh, maybe I should have gotten more than 3 bags. So you have half or a quarter of what you need down, and you've got a big stack of wood that the longer it sits outdoors and the number of winters it endures begins to warp and bend and is no longer usable. Don't folks start to nod their head and say, I knew it. He never finishes anything. Are you all in? Quit laughing at me, Jenny. Shouldn't have said that. It makes her laugh more. Or which person intending to sacrifice the blood of its nation in a war and doesn't calculate at first just what that's going to mean. That you're going to be there not for a year or two, but for decades. That you might never leave and you might never win. What person wouldn't, if they really considered it, say, I got to get out of this. I got to cut my losses. Jesus starts to speak to them in real terms because he wants to ask them, are you all in? Because people like to wear the cross, they really don't want to carry the cross. And like an athlete with Olympic dreams, or at least dreams of winning the conference here, like a builder with hopes of leaving behind something that endures and lasts, like parents raising their children with all their heart and soul, knowing that it's a gamble and you never know what's going to happen. We have to ask ourselves, am I really all in, or did I just stumble into this and maybe I should look for a way out? Jesus is practicing truth in advertising. The last one is the one that gets me. Whoever's not able to get rid of all their stuff is not able to be my disciple. Now, I can say what I want, but I've got an office full of books and a house full of books, and I can say, oh, well, it's for religious studies. It's so I can study the Bible. But I just love having them. And I keep getting more. And, you know, we all have the thing we want, whether it's collecting ceramic chickens or getting the 4th or 5th or the 6th wrench. Pretty sure about that. I asked Jenny what a tool was, and she gave me that word to use. Or if we start collecting tractors or whatever it is, we got stuff. And we don't want to get rid of our stuff. I was thinking about George Carlin's monologue on stuff when I thought about how Jenny went ahead on our vacation a week in advance, and I packed most of my stuff for the trip so she could take it till I met her later. But even then, I had to carry some of my stuff with me, and I had to keep organizing it. You know, George Carlin talks about how we all have stuff and that our houses are really a place where we store stuff. And then if we start to have too much stuff, we have to get a bigger house. And if you fly in an airplane, what you see are not houses, but the containers for people to store their stuff. And then when they travel, they have to select stuff. And how we have an industry devoted to giving you a place to put a lot of your stuff when you don't have enough room in your house for your stuff. And we're willing to pay a monthly rent to put our stuff there. And how just traveling makes us realize that we're so nervous because we left all our stuff behind, and we hope nobody takes our stuff while we're on the trip. You know, stuff is great. So I'm not so comfortable with Jesus when he tells me these many different things that are wrong with my life. Well, as Byron read from the Message, and I thought it was a good contrast actually to have both read. The word hate seems pretty powerful, and it is the word for hate. But one way we can understand it is we have to be willing to let it go or to put God first. On Mother's Day, we celebrate how sacred a mother's love is. And the love of a mom or a dad or siblings for each other or lovers, or husbands and wives who are celebrating their 65th anniversary is very special. And yet the Bible is very clear that God's love is even more powerful and needs to be put first. That maybe it's not a case so much of holding our loved ones in less regard, but finding a way to love God more. And that's the question. Are you able to enjoy this beautiful world, to watch the corn grow, to watch the children grow, and to watch our hearts grow in love for each other as we walk together this path of discipleship and find a way to make God even more important? We don't love God so we can prosper on this earth. We prosper on this earth, not always in material things, because by loving God, we begin to see everything in its perspective and to understand what is so beautiful about the things we have, what's so beautiful about the things other people have that we don't have to be jealous about, what's so beautiful about the seasons that grow, or the way God has created humanity in such diversity and such beauty that those make more sense because we put God first. Oh, Jesus had to deal in the material world. This is the Gospel of Luke, and a few chapters before, in Luke chapter 8, verses 1 to 3, Luke takes time to list the women who were supporting the work of Jesus and his disciples with their material wealth. How Mary of Magdala and Joanna and Susanna, among others, were paying the freight. If they'd have given up all their money, they wouldn't have had anything to pay to feed all these people, this large crowd that followed Jesus. They're not like an attacking army where they can steal everything they want. Somebody still has to reach into their pocket when 120 people stop at Taco Bell and each make their individual order. And not all of them stick with the $1 bean burritos. I know. Just look at my family. Are you all in? Because in order to do that, you don't have to hate your family. But you need to realize that what you see that pleases your heart with your coworkers, your family, your groups, your clubs, your friends, your Sunday school class is a reflection of just a piece of who God is. And that when you love somebody else, you need to recognize you are loving God. Do you need to get rid of your possessions by putting them in a dumpster? And don't say yes so fast, Jenny. No, just giving her a bad... See, I've had 4 weeks without giving anybody a bad time. No, but do you get rid of your stuff by putting it in a dumpster or by recognizing the genius that God has breathed into our souls? As when we saw with that amazing little device that we know somebody invented 2,000 years ago that could chart accurately the movement of the sun, the moon, the planets, and even the stars. Do we really love God more? It's possible by loving each other more, but recognizing who created us. I said earlier, everybody wants to wear the cross. Nobody wants to carry the cross. Jesus calls us to do extraordinary things for the people we love. when you hesitate before going to visit people you know in the nursing home because it makes you so sad and depressed, remember, by carrying their cross a little while, you have brightened a day. When you make a phone call to another person you know is struggling, even though you're exhausted and tired, you are recognizing that God comes first. And you are making somebody else's day more bearable. When you see in the great wheels that are spinning in our universe that there is a creator who has thought this all out in advance, so that despite all the calamities that strike, the corn still grows, and that somehow we end up coming out ahead. You are putting God first. And when you are injured and struggling and in pain, and you continue to carry the cross, you are showing that Jesus was right to challenge us and to have faith. Are you a disciple of Jesus, or are you just a church tourist? All of you have answered this question that are sitting here this morning. It's a holiday weekend. If there was ever, and by the way, I'm glad that a lot of people are getting out and enjoying camping or whatever they do. Why anybody wants to go out and have a vacation in the dirt, I've never understood, but that's all right. All of us don't make sense to somebody else. But you made your choice this morning. You're here. Let's continue to make the choice and show that we are all in, that we not only want to wear the cross, but that we're ready, no matter what, to carry the cross, because we are, after all in. Amen.